Go for gold.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? You're very welcome to this week's last word of Formula One, and to take us through all things Formula One, as always, we have the Wexford Formula One expert, Michael O'Grady. Hello, Michael. How are you? Are you well?
I'm not too bad. As you can see, I'm in my car at the minute. It's very hard to get into Suzuka here tonight. It's packed up completely. So I said I'd just pull over and I do the show while I'm still in the car. Can't
You'd
get
have
to the
to. You just
hotel,
have
you know
to.
yourself.
I was just telling you off air. You'll just have to get a bigger Bugatti Veyron.
Well, I don't know how you got to the hotel so quick. You must have got in early or something.
I know people who know people. I'm a man not without influence, So that's very.
I'm a man without influence, not.
Right, hidden message there. So yeah,
But we're looking
plenty to talk about.
Singapore,
We're going to be looking back on the
Singapore,
Singapore
yeah,
Grand Prix and looking ahead to the
that's it.
Japanese Grand Prix. So
Now we made a bit on Japan last week, but we'll cover it again because it is this weekend, as I say. We'll cover a wee bit on it again. And the Singapore Grand Prix. What do you think the biggest story was? Well, it was basically how bad Red Bull did. That's something you don't hear that often. I have a quote here from Lando Norris. When I watched Verstappen's onboard camera yesterday, I kind of laughed because I've never seen a car that bad before.
it's something you don't
It
hear too
was
often about.
It was absolutely awful from the second they hit practice in on practice for practice session one. Everyone knew what's wrong with the car. There's something going on. Both of them were abysmally slow, absolutely dreadfully slow, all over the shop, really, to be quite honest with you. They were having severe hardship with rear traction. And then when they were catching up to the cars in front of them, suddenly they were having problems with front traction. Now, it seems there was a statement put out by Red Bull, and they did say, yes, the Singapore Grand Prix does not suit their car. Now, pardon me for being a bit of a, conspiracy theorist, but there's not suiting your car, and oh my God, what just happened? And I think they fell into the second category.
Right.
I mean, in qualifying, you had what? Sergio Perez in 13th and Max Verstappen in 11th. They didn't even get into Q1. That was absolutely just incredible, really. It was just absolutely terrible. They just seemed to be chasing the grip in one direction and chasing the grip in the next direction. Car wouldn't now when I say the car wouldn't go around corners in the car, they're still not slow. Don't get me wrong. I mean, when you say a Formula One car is slow, yeah, that's it's like a cheetah on steroids. It's
Right.
still
Okay.
pretty quick, pretty quick. But compared to the rest of their cars, it was just awful. It's actually their worst qualifying on merit, not including breakdowns or problems with the cars or anything like that. But their worst qualifying on merit since 2008. That is this statistic you don't hear. And to be honest with you, Red Bull, well, being so far behind, you don't really hear either. But everyone
Yeah.
made hay while the sun shine, and Ferrari put themselves on first place. Ferrari are they on a bit of a roll? Last race they were a bit the same. They were very up there in front and they were quite competitive. They were never going to take the Red Bulls, but they made it quite difficult for them, coming in with a third and a fourth. Here, yeah, Carlos Sainz first and Charles Leclerc third after qualifying. Now, there is a bit of a strategy going on with Ferrari, but we'll come back to that in a minute. With George Russell in second, Lando Norris in fourth, and Lewis Hamilton in fifth. Now, hands up everybody who thought there was going to be a Red Bull in the top five.
Yeah.
I think everybody thought it, really, didn't they? I mean, it's not something you hear about an awful lot. Well, it was an interesting on the race itself. There was an interesting tire usage, and this is where the Ferrari thing kicked in, because everybody was on the medium tires, bar Charles Leclerc in third on soft tires. Valtteri Bottas was, or sorry, Joe was as well in the Alfa Romeo, but like he was last, so he had nothing to lose. And then both Red Bulls and Valtteri Bottas were on hard tires. Now, if you have a team thing, everyone's going to do one stop. You're going to do the mediums, you're going to do the hard. So obviously, Red Bull thought, well, we'll do the hard, let everyone pit, jump ahead, and then come out in the mediums, and we're faster than anyone else. That was the idea. But what was really curious is why were Ferrari splitting the strategy? One car on soft, one car on medium, and the lead car was on medium. That was the interesting thing. Well, it all kicked off with the start of the race with Charles Leclerc jumping George Russell like George Russell didn't exist into second place. But what was really interesting is at no point in the race did Charles Leclerc try and rough up Carlos Sainz. I mean, he's on soft tires. Theoretically, he's quicker. He never once did it. Talk about the wingman of the year. He did an absolute incredible job. And as I go through bits and pieces on the race, you'll see exactly what you mean. Now, there was a bit there was a little bit of silly buggering going on, and I don't think we all have to guess really who, because it's unfortunately someone has been playing silly buggers quite a lot lately. But on the start, he jumped two cars by going off the track, including his teammate George Russell.
When you're doing something, you might as well do it right, no using half measures.
Well, that's very true.
Yeah.
That's very true. He jumped George Russell on the start, and he jumped Lando Norris, who was in front of him, by going slightly off the track and then just basically going completely off the track, going up the outside and straight into third place. Now, there was a little bit of chat going on at the time, but in fairness to them, they knew they'd done something wrong and they gave the place back to George Russell at the end of the first lap. Now, the question was Lando Norris, and Lando Norris was going around after the end of lap one going, and where's my place? He jumped me too. Now, eventually they gave in because there was a threat of a 5-second penalty maybe imposed. But what I thought was rather cheeky, and I thought it should have got the 5-second penalty, is he didn't give it back to lap 9, which completely and utterly wrecked Lando Norris's sort of position behind George Russell. It dropped him right back behind him, So, I mean, I thought that was a bit of a cheeky move, and I thought the FIA could have jumped on that one a bit quicker, saying, yeah, look, you've given one place back. Now, if you don't want 5 seconds, give the second one back in the next lap or two, But
usually they're usually very quick to give out penalties, aren't they?
They love their penalty points, but they've
given them for athletes, they've given penalty points.
Absolutely. He scratched his nose on that corner. He didn't have two hands on the wheel. Penalty points. and that's the way it was. But they were actually quite slow in Singapore. It was about to be announced when he gave the place back.
Was that due to the nature of the track, or was it the weather, or?
I have no idea. No, I think just the FIA were on maybe hadn't had their Weetabix in the morning, or Red Bull weren't giving out freebies. I'm telling you, weren't giving out freebies, but it's it was kind of a bit odd, I have to admit. The other thing really about Hamilton not giving the place back to Russell for a lap and then not giving it back to Norris is, of course, he was slowing down his teammate. He was slowing down the two of them. So much so he gave the two Ferraris, 1 and 2, a bit of clean air and got Leclerc ahead of Russell, giving him a bit of a comfortable situation. So not only did he make the mistake of jumping the two, but he also gave the Ferraris a bit of breathing space, which I'm sure Ferrari were going, yes, thank you very much. But I'm sure George Russell wasn't, as to say. Now we had
Mercedes wouldn't have been too happy with that either.
No, they probably weren't actually. But it was good when they swapped places, I have to admit. There was a bit of a Tsunoda broke down before the first lap was out. And I think maybe they were hesitating for a minute, thinking, oh, he'll go in now. I'll pit real quick, come out in different tires, and I'll come out in medium tires or soft tires, and then we'll move forwards from there. Even though he dropped back places, if he was on soft tires, he'd be, gone by an absolute bullet. But with this thing with the overtaking, yes, Norris did have a point. He was completely correct. He did jump the corner to get past Norris. He wouldn't have got past them otherwise. And then he most certainly wouldn't have got past Russell.
Look at turbo boost. Jumping over.
Turbo boost wouldn't have been a bad idea to be. It wouldn't have been a bad idea.
Not maybe in a Formula 1 car, but
Well, I did notice then the next stage, I think, was more watching Ferrari because Charles Leclerc was on top of Sainz. Now, they asked him just to back off a bit. He was not making any attempt to overtake him. I mean, he's on soft tires. Sainz is on mediums. He could have overtaken him in any corner, because that's the big difference between the tires. But he didn't. But he stayed right on top of him. Now, they did ask him to fall back a bit, which sounds a bit crazy considering, Russell wasn't that far behind. But what was happening was, I like to call it the Red Bull effect because, he was absolutely grand until the DRS flapped open when he was less than a second behind Sainz. Then what was happening was the car was basically jumping forward slightly and putting heat into the front tires. But then he was losing heat in the back tires. And then when he got to the next corner, suddenly he didn't have the grip he had before because the back tires had lost a little bit of heat and he started sliding around. And he'd have to pit a lot earlier than he, probably should have. But anyhow, Suzuka is just a mad mental track, really. It's kind of Singapore it is a mental track, I have to admit. It is an absolutely mental track. It just throws up spanners the whole time, and that's a great thing. That is an absolute
the observers
great thing.
it is. But these are highly skilled drivers.
Well, that's very true.
It's nothing to them, I suppose, to a certain extent.
No, but what was really good with Sainz as well, I think, was when Leclerc had to pop back a wee bit. Sainz put in a lap that was a second faster than anybody else, and then back down to the speed he was doing already. So it was kind of right. Give him a bit of space. I don't want to run him into Russell. I'll push forwards a bit, and that way he'll be okay. So there was a real team game going on with Ferrari because Leclerc squarely had his eyes on who was behind him, not in front of him. And considering he had the soft tires, he could have been gone, but he actually didn't. It's nice to see this in Ferrari because the last race, of course, they were tearing at each other the whole time. And I reckon they came third and fourth. One of them could have came second if they weren't tearing at each other the whole time. So it was nice to actually, see something going on with that. Now, the spanner was really thrown in the works at lap 19 because Logan Sargent decided there was a very nice barrier with his name on it. So he decided he would go into the barrier. And here's your late call again. He knocked the nose off the car.
He wanted to become acquainted with the barrier.
He did. He liked the looks of it. He liked the looks of it. Jesus, that's a nice barrier. I must have a look at that. And he knocked his nose off, which went under the car. Now, instead of doing what normally is, the nose is loose under the car, don't go on, he decides he's going to drive all the way back to the pits. Now, if that nose comes out, yeah, exactly. If that nose slides out, he's really going to cause hassle altogether. But he actually managed to do it. But the thing was, the FIA jumped on the fact that the nose was underneath, and they called out a virtual safety car. Exactly when Sargent was pulling into the pits. It should have been called like 60 seconds beforehand, no, it's too late now. He's in, the nose didn't come off, but it did trigger quite a lot because it was a situation where no car really ran away with the race, if you get me. Everything was like 1 to 2 seconds behind each other the whole way down the track. So it was kind of waiting for somebody to blink.
But was it like the race was in warp zone or something like that it was like in slow motion for the entire race? Or
Actually, that bit of it was, yeah, because you were just watching and no one making an attempt on anybody. Everybody just running around within a second and a half of each other. And you could tell there was tension. You could tell who's going to blink first because it's going to be a midfielder. He's going to blink, come in for tires, come back out, hit the kind of accelerator, be even incredibly faster than he was already, and everyone else is going to suddenly dive in and try to cover him. So we knew it was going to get chaos. Well, yeah, Logan Sargent going off the track caused the chaos because they all came in. And now here it is again. I thought this was quite significant and a big bow, I have to admit, to Ferrari again and Charles Leclerc, because Sainz dived in first. Charles Leclerc came in behind him, but he did the most amazing job because he slowed the car down to make sure everyone behind him would slow down and give Sainz a bit more of a kick, because he knew he was going to have to come and pit after Sainz. So he's going to lose his place because they're double stacking him. But then if he loses his place, who's going to end up in second place? And he wanted to make sure that whoever did had enough space to Sainz. And I mean, you can't blame him. Wow, what a move. Like, and he got delayed and he came back out in sixth. But he was happy enough. He did that off his own back. They didn't even ask him to do it. And he had seen that. Let Carlos in. I'll drag them all down by an extra second. And then that'll give him a bit more of a break, He did have a disastrous pit Leclerc as well, but we won't go there. But, it was a very late safety car. It caused all the action to go. And then, well, Charles Leclerc did a great job. Now, the interesting other one was once everyone had pitted, the two Red Bulls hadn't pitted. Now, the strategy would have been Max Verstappen doesn't pit and Max Verstappen is first. Max Verstappen was second. He didn't get past Carlos Sainz. He was in front of him on brand new tyres, brand new hard tyres, and Max Verstappen was behind him on 19-lap-old hard tires. It was the worst call I think I've ever seen in my entire life, because after the restart they just got mugged and mugged and mugged. It was so bad that when they pulled in for their scheduled stop, both Red Bulls came out in last and second last place. That's how bad it was. Now, they didn't stay there, but still, that's actually how bad it was. I have never, for such a bad qualifying and tactics being massively important to them because of what's going on with their car, to do that and run the cars around for a few laps to see how it goes and the cars to fall down. They were being mugged on the track.
It was very Red Bull like and very
on Red Bull.
Yeah.
Obviously they didn't bring a few cans with them this weekend.
That's where went wrong.
Can I have a Red Bull there, lads? Sorry, we didn't bring any cans this week. What? How are we supposed to get wings?
You'd have flying Formula One cars then,
Absolutely, that's very true. Yeah, that is very true. But it was great to see.
And then that would be. I could imagine you'd be watching the telly and next thing, what is that Formula One car flying around? It's supposed to be on the ground.
They can do when they collide tires sometimes.
When you've had enough Red Bull.
Absolutely. Now, the next vital point, and this one was quite critical, is towards the end there was a virtual safety car because Esteban Ocon broke down. It wasn't in the best place in the world. In fairness, he did try his hardest to get the car out of the way. Can't blame him for that. But not exactly so. They brought out the virtual safety car. Now you talk about Ferrari actually making a mistake, because Charles Leclerc was the best wingman known to man, but the guy behind him was Fernando Alonso. Leclerc could have pitted and come back out and still been ahead of Fernando Alonso. And then Ferrari were about to do it, but the two Mercedes dove into the pits. Now, here's where Ferrari had a stupid idea and a brilliant idea all at the same time, because everyone thought, why isn't Charles Leclerc pulling in? But it was very simple. If he pulled in, he'd come out behind the Mercedes. And the Mercedes on brand new medium tyres, they were going to be fast. And they needed someone to run interference to make sure they did not catch Sainz on very old hard tyres, because there was no way, with the new Inters, there were going to be chain lightning. And that's exactly what happened. The two Mercedes came out, and with Charles Leclerc right in front of him. And it didn't take him long to get past Charles, but it was just enough to slow them down. Just that wee bit that they didn't actually catch up. We had, of course, Carlos Sainz in first place, and we had Lando Norris in second place. And then George Russell was coming up with Hamilton right on top of him. I mean, they were incredibly quick compared to the cars with the old tires on them. And the little bit that Leclerc did delayed them by a couple of laps. So by the time they got up there, the race was nearly over. Now, okay, I personally thought it was silly buggers again. And silly bugger of the week is going to silly bugger of the week is going to a particular driver this week. But Russell caught up with the two of them, with Hamilton about a second and a half behind him. So Russell is trying to take Lando Norris. Now, in fairness, there was a bit of good, how will I put it, good tactics going on between Leclerc and Norris, in that or be Sainz and Norris, I should say. In that Sainz was about 2 seconds ahead of Norris. So Norris was a kind of a bit of a sitting duck to the Mercedes. So what did Sainz do? Now, both of them actually realized what the other one was doing on the track. Sainz actually slowed down to get Norris within a second so that when he gets DRS, Sainz will put the foot down, Norris will get the DRS and the car would go faster, making it impossible for the Mercedes to get past the two of them on the straights, which I thought was absolutely gifted. Meanwhile, silly bugger number one, as I like to call him, starts attacking his teammate from behind. Now, a lot of people said, oh, that's fair enough. He's behind his teammate. Yeah, but he frustrated him so much between trying to overtake Norris in front of him, trying to block Hamilton behind him, that actually on the last lap, he made a big dive at Norris to get out of the way and put himself into the barrier. And that was or that was George Russell's day over, which was not very good, as to say. I thought it was a bit silly buggerish, but there you go. It is, I suppose, what it is. And it ended up with Carlos Sainz first, Norris second, Hamilton third. Charles Leclerc actually got fourth, and Max Verstappen got himself up to a very lonely fifth place, but he was there. Poor Sergio Perez only managed eighth. They managed to get up. They were never going to get any further, really, to be honest with you. And probably George Russell being off the track gave him an extra point, or two. And that's the way it went up. I have to admit that the lessons to be learned on the day was the degradation wasn't as bad as I expected. The teams were actually surprised. Perez, the only interesting one with that is that all the teams were saying degradation wasn't bad. But then you had Sergio Perez, a man who's made his career on making a tyre last longer than anybody else on the track, couldn't actually do anything about tyre wear at all. It was absolutely dreadful on the day. But it was an aberration for Red Bull. They've already said that come Japan, they will be back to business as usual, which I suppose to a fair point, is probably a good thing. So the serious naughty driver of the day, or the silly bugger of the day, to me goes to, unfortunately, I'm sorry, but it goes to Lewis, driving past the cars at the start. He tried it again later on, actually, and got away with it with another car, and then kind of carrying his teammate who's trying to get into second place. He should have just backed off to about 2 seconds behind him and give him the kind of space to do it, rather than trying to be overtaking him as well. So he kind of got away with that one because
so
he did well.
With this track, is this the Singapore Grand Prix? Is it known for throwing up these things? Like over the years, or was it just specifically this year? It's
a bit of an oddball. It's very hard to predict the Singapore Grand Prix. I think it wasn't so bad. Most people thought tyre wear was going to be bad, and it wasn't. And it normally throws up a few issues, but I've never seen an issue as bad as Red Bull's before. I've never seen anything as bad as that with any team that you come across. I think that was quite significant. I don't know what was going on. It was almost as if they traded in the Red Bull engine and put in a Morris Minor engine. It was confusing everyone. Right? It was. It really was. It was just incredibly silly. And now Ferrari did an amazing job. And to me, if there was two drivers of the day, I would have put in both Ferrari drivers, Leclerc and Sainz. Leclerc for helping his teammate, and Sainz for having the wherewithal to get Norris into the DRS to back off Russell so they couldn't talk about tactics. Absolutely amazing. What I did like is there was a fairly immediate comment by Christian Horner that said it was an impressive performance, and if anyone had to beat this, I'm glad it was Carlos Sainz.
Very good.
That was a nice thing to say.
It was a nice thing.
And
then another thing to come out.
Maybe it's easy to be gracious.
Lance Stroll was in the spot of other as well, wasn't he? Was it in the just?
Yeah. We can neither confirm nor deny that Lance Stroll was in the spot of bother. Understatement of the understatement of the year, really.
But we have to be politically correct,
because, to be honest with you, he hasn't been. We have to be politically correct, but it kind of, he's sadly lacking compared to his aged geriatric companion or counterpart, as to say. So it wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world that was happening. But yes, his how will we put it? The fact he wasn't there was noticed, maybe.
So I suppose that brings us on now
His
to
conspicuous absence was maybe noticed.
and that brings us on to the Japanese Grand Prix. And just to let people know the running order of the weekend, on the 22nd of September is the practice one between 3:30 and 4:30. And also on the 22nd is practice two from 7 o'clock until 8. And on the 23rd is practice three from 3:30 to 4:30. And then is the qualifying itself on the 23rd from 7 until 8. And then finally on the 24th, Sunday, that is the race itself at 6. So, and just to go through the the standings before this race, Max Verstappen is top. Surprise, surprise, on 374 points.
That's a surprise.
Yeah, you didn't see that one coming, did you, Michael? Huh?
Yeah, surprise. Yeah, you go. Yeah, it was just a shock.
Yeah, exclusive. That's the word, exclusive there. In second, then Sergio Perez from Red Bull on a distant second. It has to be said, on 223 points.
Distant second.
Lewis Hamilton then in third on 180 points. Very poor that. Fernando Alonso in fourth from Aston Martin on 170. Carlos Sainz in fifth on 142. In sixth, then, is Charles Leclerc from Ferrari on 123. And then in seventh, George Russell from Mercedes on 109. Lando Norris in eighth from McLaren on 97. Lance Stroll in ninth on 47. And, of course, finally then in 10th is Pierre Gasly from Alpine. And then finally, I suppose, before we actually say the news and our preview of the Japanese Grand Prix, well, what can you say about this track? There's one kind of a short kind of straight, and then kind of, you couldn't really call it it looks kind of straight, but it's more like a gentle curve at the top. It's just there's something for everyone in that one, isn't there? Yeah. It's just
Did someone say that this resembles resembles the shape of a character that's Shang or something like that?
Well, do you know what it looks like?
I'm not quite sure.
It looks like a vacuum cleaner. You know, one of them stand up.
I wouldn't like to be trying to hoover with it, all right. But yeah, I know what you mean. I think it looks more like a bicycle that's been run over by an articulated lorry, personally. But there you go. Oh no, it'd be completely gone then in that case. That'd absolutely be it. Well, things you need to know about this track. First Grand Prix 1987, lap record is 1:30.983 by Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. Now, the guys love it, the drivers love it, but who were the last 5 pole sitters? You're looking at Max Verstappen, Sebastian Vettel, there you go, in a Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton, and Nico Rosberg. Obviously, Max Verstappen being first. And the last 5 winners, 2022 was Max Verstappen. 2019, because of course we had COVID, was Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton in 18 and 17, and Nico Rosberg in 16. Now, I would not be holding your breath to say that you're going to see a Mercedes on pole here. I think you're going to be maybe back to a Red Bull again. Although we have been surprised already. Compounds of tyres to bring in a C1 hard, C2 medium, and C3 soft. There is good traction on this track, about decidedly average, and the grip is quite good too. But there is, I suppose there is a little bit of tyre wear here, a little bit more than in some circuits. So maybe a 2-stop might be suitable. Not quite sure, but we'll see what happens. There is a lot of tyre stress on this. Lateral force, especially, because you're going left, right, left, right, left, right. You know what I mean? It's a bit all over the place. So you're going to get, you're going to get a lot of fun here. And of course, the main questions with this race is, how are Red Bull going to respond from the last race? Now, you know, they're saying everything's okay. They're saying everything's going to be back to normal. but they didn't expect what happened in Singapore. So we'll wait and see. And despite that, despite the fact they're on the verge of kind of the constructors' championship at the moment, you have to remember Ferrari are starting to do well all of a sudden. They had they had a big threat to them in Monza, which I suppose was maybe a bit predictable, it being the Italian Grand Prix. And I think a lot of people were very happy that it wasn't just, we've turned up the engine for Italy. I think a lot of people were glad that that didn't happen, that there was something else going to. Now, Lance Stroll will be returning. Yes, he is. After, well, he practically lost half his car, really, didn't he? In the accident. He's okay, as they say, but. Well, yeah, he lost. That was some crash, I can tell you. That was absolutely some crash. It seems he said there was a fly on the dashboard and he went to swat him, and that was the end of that. And Liam Lawson's second home Grand Prix. If we know Liam Lawson, he's been a bit of a standout driver of the past 3 weeks. He's kind of in, and he's just helping out at the moment because Danny Ricciardo's broken his hand, and he might retain that position yet because he's doing very, very well for himself. I have to admit, pat on the back and all that sort of crack. So we'll wait and see what's going to happen with that now, because maybe he'll be a very, very good driver. You wouldn't know. Maybe maybe Danny, that's it. I'm afraid, Danny. This guy is doing so well. We like him.
Yeah, and I suppose maybe
you just can't really tell.
Looking at this track as well, it looks like dry weather or wet weather, it could impact how the race goes, and maybe even the qualifying time or the lap times for it, because I suppose it could definitely affect the race on the day. But
absolutely,
it could make it very.
We don't like rain.
Yes, indeed.
We don't like rain. We like dry rain. It's not going to rain the weekend. Friday for practice is going to rain. Saturday and Sunday, supposedly, only a 20% chance of rain as it stands currently, which means it probably isn't going to rain. Boo! But it is a fun track to watch the cars and all the same, so I wouldn't worry about that. It's a race you can't really, you can't be. It's the weirdest track ever. It's a track that wouldn't be great to be at, because you wouldn't see an awful lot. The cars are going slower, but you don't see. But you're missing so much. Watching these cars snake up the different turns, 90-degree bends, and if you're in one position looking, you're missing so much. It's a terrible race to go to. That's an awful thing to say, but it is an awful race to have to go to. You're better off watching it on the TV.
You wouldn't exactly be shouting this is a must-go-to race, but I suppose average lap time and the fastest lap time for this track.
Well, as we know, the fastest lap time is a 1:30.9 from Lewis Hamilton. That is not going to be beaten this weekend. I think you're going to be looking at a late 1:31. I could be surprised, but we'll wait and see. Just another little bit of information while you were talking about it. Safety car probability here is actually the highest it has been. It's 50% probable you're going to get a safety car.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 33% probability you're going to get a virtual safety car. So there you are.
I suppose
it's the only figure of 8 car on the calendar too.
With 4 minutes left there, I suppose to get your top 5 and any small bits and pieces of news before we head, because there's about 3 minutes 52 seconds left.
Oh, I'd say the top 3, and I'm going to step out on a limb a little bit, and not with number 1 will be Max Verstappen, although we were wrong last week. Max Verstappen, I'm putting Carlos Sainz. Yeah, well, you said it first. Carlos Sainz, I'm pushing in second because he's doing a great job at the minute. And I'm putting Lando Norris ahead of the Mercedes. I'm going to put him ahead of Mercedes because he's doing a great job. I am hoping upon hope that Aston Martin can get that car back going again, because if they can, at least then we have the Hamilton and Alonso Alonso battle back in place again. Because, of course, Hamilton has now jumped Alonso because Alonso did so bad in Singapore. Well, the car did so bad in Singapore, so we shall wait and see. But that's my top three. I'm definitely putting a Ferrari and probably Perez in fourth and Russell in fifth, I would dare say. Russell, at least this time, he didn't get the bad calls, but unfortunately, he got kind of pushed into a corner practically, so hopefully things will work out a bit better for him this time. Just before I move off it, actually, most pole positions and most wins by the same person, Michael Schumacher. 8 pole positions and 6 wins. So we'll see if Max Verstappen might want to take on that one. What do you think?
For yourself or Paul Egan in your Formula One Haley bins.
Yay! What was I going to say? News for the week, few bits and pieces. You tell me when we run out of time.
Yeah, 2 minutes
Lewis
left.
Hamilton. That's okay. Lewis Hamilton says he's all fired up for a battle for P2 in the Constructors' Championship as they close in on Ferrari. Now, you could say they're closing in on Ferrari, but Ferrari finished ahead of him in the last race. So, and of course, Russell didn't finish at all. So we will wait and see. I'm sure Ferrari will have something up their sleeve for that one. We'll see what's going on. Tsunoda has joked. Did Alpha Tauri need 3 seats in 2024 as Lawson stakes his claim for a full-time drive after driving exceptionally well for the last few races? He has a point. They've really got a conundrum with him. I mean, they really are scratching their heads. I mean, he wasn't even the next choice to replace the driver. It was Danny Ricciardo. And then now Danny's gone, and he's kind of the second choice to replace, or the fourth driver. I tell you, he's doing a cracking job. I can see somebody losing their drive here before the thing goes out. I have to admit, yeah, exactly. And I just noticed as well, he's pushed me a lot. Lando Norris is in massive praise of Oscar Piastri at the minute as he signs a new deal with McLaren. He's saying he's a very good teammate. He's driving him very well. Hopefully that's true, because I think sort of Norris has just forged ahead, whereas Piastri's kind of fallen back quite a lot. I don't see how he's pushed Norris so much, but look, it's like everything. He's not in the business very long. World champions and stuff like that don't come around like over 2 or 3 races or anything like that. You know yourself. He could be well in with a chance.
That's it. So listen, thanks very much for taking the time out. Thanks very much for taking the time out to do last word on Formula One, and we look forward to looking back on the Japanese Grand Prix next week.
A pleasure as always.
No problem. Thanks very much. And that was Michael O'Grady, our Formula One expert, and myself talking about all things Formula One.